Hello and welcome back to the House of the Stag podcast. Today we have our very first guest of the podcast, the legend SYRIO FOREL, aka Miltos Yerolemou. Hello, buddy. How are you? How are you doing?
Hello.
I'm very well. It's a pleasure to see you guys. And how has the last few months been treating you? How have you been coping?
It's been
Where are
okay.
you from? Is one of you in Germany and the other one in the States? Am I
I'm in the
right?
States.
Yeah.
And I'm from Germany. From
Yeah, and I'm in the UK, so we're just coming out of our lockdown. So
Yeah.
We're still in it. I just got my first dose. Let's see how the next couple of months go.
I got the second dose. It's very exciting, I mind you. Very. It hits different.
Yeah, then let's get right into it, shall we? Um, Last month sparked the 10-year anniversary of Game of Thrones, and I guess I just wanted to ask you, what means Game of Thrones to you?
it's my blimey. It's like a lot. It's a lot because even after all these years, we're still talking about it. We're still talking about it. So for me, it's something that's been part of my life ever since I did it, and I never thought that because obviously I'm just one of those jobbing actors who just I do lots of different work, stage, theatre. Not very much of any of that at the moment because of the pandemic. But the reality is that I find it omnipresent. That's the best word to define it. It's been my bread and butter during these very lean months. So I have a great deal of affection for it, and the fans, and and it means a lot to me. It's kind of changed my life. So I'm very grateful to that because as actors, we're not ever really looking for fame, but what we really like is the security that being well known for one small part in a big machine is known for. So yeah, I'm 100% grateful.
When did you first hear about Game of Thrones? And how did you get cast? Is it true that you were originally going to be Lord Varys?
I wasn't going to be Lord Varys. I just read for him. He was the first. I got given the scene where he goes to Ned, and after Ned's been, really badly injured by Jaime Lannister, and he says to him, it's like a confessional, and it's all about telling him to renounce what he said and take the black, go to the wall, your family will be safe, and I really loved reading it, but they didn't think I was right, but they did think I was right for SYRIO FOREL, and they were right, of course. And I knew Nina Gold, who was the casting director, and she called me in, and she's really great, and her assistant read the part of Arya Stark in the first lesson, and I always say to this, every time I talk about this, I always say that Robert, her assistant, who read opposite me as Arya Stark, was so good that he made me much better in my audition. So I have him to thank for getting that job. He was so good at reading all the parts, because remember, he would have had to read all the parts opposite the other actors, that they gave him a part in the first season of Game of Thrones. He's one of the messengers in King's Landing.
Oh, is he? Is he the one when Ned Stark arrives in King's Landing that informs him about the small council meeting?
I think so, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
That's Nina Gold's assistant.
Well, okay. Next question: who's your personal favorite character in Game of Thrones?
This is very good. I love this question. out of everyone, and this is a holistic take. This is all about not just the character, but how the show depicts them, obviously the acting, but all round character that I can't get enough of is Jaime Lannister. Jaime Lannister to me is because I genuinely didn't like him when I first met him. I genuinely didn't, and by the end, I was like, yeah, he was the dude, and he didn't change much. Interestingly enough, even though his journey is very windy, but he doesn't change very much because he ends up in the arms of his sister where he began, and so it's an interesting story because so much happens to him, and he really does. He's a very different person.
Yeah, we have that in
And
common.
I'm a big fan, and of course of Nikolai, who I've met a few times at conventions and spent some time with, and he's an awesome dude, so awesome.
Yeah, I feel like after, he and the rest have saved Westeros from the White Walkers, he kind of he's like, my job is done now. Now I can go be selfish and with my sister. It doesn't matter. I already saved Westeros. What else do you want from me? When I think about it that way, I'm like, yeah. And also, like, even before he started in the show, he already saved King's Landing from the Mad King. So he always had that baggage and all that. He was just trying to be a douchebag for a while. And pushing Bran was definitely not okay. But he's always had this struggle, I guess. And it's really fascinating.
Yeah, the inner struggle is what makes Jaime Lannister such a great character in both the books and the show. So one of my absolute favorites as well. So we have that in common.
If you've could have played a different character in Game of Thrones, who would it be and why?
I love the no bullshit attitude of characters like Bronn. And he's so brilliantly portrayed and written, and it's just a joy to watch all of that. The same goes for the Hound. The Hound ends up being a brilliant, a black comedic force, amongst all the kind of mayhem and shit, the madness, because they completely fit in. They're to me they're the most authentic because they're just mercenaries.
True.
Get at losing their heads and whatever it takes, and I really appreciate that in a human being because it feels real, and I relate to that very much.
Yeah, which kind of reminds me that the Hound roasted your character when Arya's like First Order Bravos. He's like First Order Barros getting killed by Merindron. That was so funny. Yeah,
he's not wrong. He's not wrong. Not wrong.
Well, to this day, you attend lots of fan conventions and you've even given water dancing lessons online now for fans. Do you have a favorite fan encounter or a funny fan story, or is it just always a funny and great time talking to fans?
I don't have any strange or really memorable occasion. I mean, there's one occasion which people I know still bring up, and it is quite ridiculous. I was doing this convention in Blackpool in the UK, and there was a lot of people there. They even got Richard Madden. No one could find him. They hid him away in some kind of a closet doing signings. But none of us met him. But a lot of the cast were there, and all in the run-up, I'd said to the convention, make sure you've got the wooden staves. I always ask for 4-foot long wooden, like broomstick handles, just something solid, easy to pick up from DIY stores, hardware stores. And obviously I give them to the participants so we can do the class. I kept checking, have you got some? Make sure you get some, because that's very important. I don't bring my own. You have to source it. Of course, I turn up. The whole convention is a complete disaster. People don't get paid. It's a bad one, right? Let's just put it that way. It's one of those nightmare convention stories that you hear about and are true. They've happened more than once to me, and I remember the funniest and most ridiculous thing that happened was I was going to do a water dance class, and of course they didn't have the wooden sticks. Didn't get them, because that's the kind of cowboy operation we were dealing with. So one of my very, very sweet and imaginative assistants ran out. It was around Christmas time, and went and bought wrapping paper rolls. A wrapping thing with a cardboard in the middle. And without unpeeling them, we just used those as sticks. They worked for about 15 minutes, but we went through them because they just kept disintegrating as we used them. But that's a ridiculous story, and I wish it never happened. But yeah, it did.
Well, great improvising on your part then. Jesus.
It was it was her idea.
And I have noticed that there's a number of stage actors in Game of Thrones, such as yourself, Stephen Delane, and Aidan Gillen. Do you think, as someone who has experience with stage, that that helps with your line delivery or how you interpret the characters, or how does that change your approach when it's a recorded production?
If I was wearing my theatre hat to answer this question, it would be very different to the kind of my more conventional hat, which is just like the way I really think about how these things work. There's no doubt about it that there's something about the way that actors are educated in this country, in the UK, that gives them this kind of classical background. So when it comes to period or fantasy, we can make those kind of slightly stilted words about lords and castles and dragons and, battles all sound a bit more authentic. Maybe. The other thing is that English actors live in the places where they film this stuff. I mean, they could have filmed it somewhere else and would have used more local actors, I think. But ultimately, because George R.R. Martin's original material is kind of based on the War of the Roses, it means makes perfect sense to use English actors, and we bring a certain gravitas. Not myself personally, but
Oh, you do.
Stephen Delane is he's a heavyweight, man. He's he's the real deal. So sometimes we overthink stuff as British actors, but I think our reputation as being intelligent actors is justified, and I think it's just the way that we're educated. We're educated on classics, on classical texts, so on poetry, on the written word. So I think whereas American actors are so good at just being natural. It's the kind of thing that British actors are really rubbish at. But just do the natural thing. I remember a theatre director saying, I love working. She's British, right? She always works with British actors. She said, I just worked with some American actors in a three-hander. And she said it was so amazing because the thing that British to deal with props, right? British actors, for some reason, we're worldwide renowned for being rubbish at dealing with props. We can stand and deliver the lines beautifully, but don't give us a phone to hold in our hands because we are fucking hate it. But American actors can do that stuff in their sleep.
I really like the part where Arya watches a play in Essos, which reenacts like the death of Ned, and I like the theater actors trying to go full theater, and it's just really nice thing to see.
Yeah, it feels like you're watching an actual play.
Yeah,
It's a great episode, by the way.
I loved it. Lots of people thought it was like filler, but I was like, this is great, you know, because we talk about mummers and mummers farce.
Yeah. All of that's great.
Yeah.
And Richard E. Grant is always fantastic. He's hammy as, so. Have you seen him?
No, show
No.
him to us.
Come here. What? Someone wants to see you. Oh, look, beautiful boy. This is very beautiful. Hello.
Well, hello there.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Can you see him?
Yeah.
This is Louis.
The first dog of Bravos.
Yeah. He's the dog of death, but we never say no to him. What a good boy. I know. He's only doing this because I can't even say the word. He knows the word. He's too intelligent. Go on, out.
You are in yet another huge franchise, Star Wars. I grew up watching Star Wars, and from my experience, those fans are very passionate as well, and you come across like you're one of them. So I gotta ask, what was it like to stand right next to Harrison Ford and Chewbacca?
When you see Harrison Ford dressed as Han Solo, there's only one reaction you have. It's that you're. I mean, I don't get starstruck really, but that was a very special moment, and seeing him was a very nostalgic and thrilling thing. Yeah, it was really great. It was a great experience. It's you're doing a film like that. It's actually kind of creatively, it's quite technical, so that's not so brilliant. But that's the thing about filming. Filming is a very different kind of workflow, as the Californians love to say. So I think it's so thrilling to get dressed up and to look at the designs and to see how it's visualized and how it's realized. And then the armory guys come in and they give you a choice of blasters to choose, and you choose your blaster. I mean, you feel like you're part of something very, very special. So yeah, it was working on Star Wars was a great, great thrill.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You can only imagine standing right next to those legends and to kind of be involved in this production. It's gotta be like a dream come true for us Star Wars guys. All right, George, let's head into the fan questions. We got a few
First
questions.
fan question from Lena Lannister. If you could work with 3 actors of your choosing in an upcoming project, who would it be and why?
who's that amazing redhead actress, Jessica Chastain.
Chastain.
God, I mean, it's so difficult. You know, so the things about actors is that they can be very different on screen to how they are in real life. And so are you wanting to work with the character that you're going to work opposite, or are you actually just interested in working with the actor? It's complicated. It's kind of quite meta. But it's yeah, actors like that, her choices as well, her choices of films, all lead to Michael Keaton is another guy who, on the first surface of it, that guy is, he did this and this and this, but you see the body of his work and how versatile he is when he's allowed to be. It's really, I mean, I don't know. Did you see Birdman?
Yeah, it's very confusing. It's very good though.
Isn't it? I mean, he is fantastic in that, isn't he? I mean,
Yeah.
I just couldn't take my eyes off him.
And also, he's in Spotlight. I feel like in the last 5 years, every movie he's been in was like an Oscar contender. Yeah.
Even that
really
crap
good.
movie about McDonald's and the origins of McDonald's.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a very good movie, but he's always good in everything he does because he's
Right.
committed.
Yeah. And he's Batman.
And he was Batman, and he was fantastic and very. I'm really excited about the fact that.
Oh, they might bring him back.
That
I heard.
there's going to be like a meta time wobble thing where they're all going to end up being in the same universe.
Yeah. Also from Lena Lannister, did you improvise the dancing lesson with Maisie, or was there choreography process?
Yeah, choreography, definitely. Very, very important when it comes to filming stuff that you have, well, doing fights that you have to film, because you have to repeat it. So it wasn't improvised. It was, we had a great team. I worked with an amazing sword mentor who kind of, we worked out the vocabulary of the water dance, and then the stunt coordinators put a fight together with the Hungarian stuntmen. And that was really thrilling because obviously they were very, very good and they made me look really, really good. But I love all of that. I'm a dancer by trade, and I love learning choreography. To me, it's like doing jigsaws. And when you get it right, it's so satisfying. And so yeah, it was choreographed. It was very choreographed. And but the key to it, and this is kind of what when I teach my water dance classes, is this is what it's all about, is that you're interested in how can you make it look as improvised as you can, so it doesn't feel like it's. But that's really up to how they film it. Really, there are bits in the last Lannister fight which I think the filming didn't match the choreography. There was stuff you kind of missed that we did that I always get really frustrated about, but it's such a nerdy thing to be frustrated about because only I would notice it, because only I knew what really was going on in that fight from within it. Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting thing. That's why really good cameramen and directors, when they're good at shooting fights, they're really good at shooting fights. Like Neil Marshall he's brilliant at kinetic camera work like that. It picks up everything. But it's just a matter of experience, and also whether you've done it a lot, and it's just one of those things. And that's not to denigrate or disrespect the directors and the camera people on that episode, because they did an amazing job. But you've got to remember, directors have to cover a lot of stuff. It's not like you don't hire someone to be specifically good about doing one thing, except when they did with Neil Marshall, because they had big battles ahead of them. So that's all part of it.
Yeah, I also like Neil Marshall's work when initially, Game of Thrones budget was not like $1 billion per season, and he had to like construct everything in Blackwater and the wall to make things look like more epic. I think it was going to be like off screen in the beginning for the Blackwater, and then I think D&D and Neil Marshall insisted or something, and it ended up being one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The next question is by Martina Rose. What do you expect from the Game of Thrones prequel House of the Dragon?
Well, this should be quite exciting because there is a really good cast, and the series creator is Miguel Sapochnik, I think. And so, I'll qualify that, or this isn't the qualification. I'll qualify this in a minute, but it's inevitable. It's inevitable that prequels are going to be made. But as a creative person, I'm very conscious of trying to find new stories. But of course, we don't have any new stories. So what we end up doing is making more of the same. But will it be more of the same? If it's good, they'll do what The Mandalorian did and take something that is very familiar, but create something that was completely self-contained. The Mandalorian is brilliant. The storytelling in it is fantastic. It's really simple. It doesn't overreach. It literally, those episodes are short and they pack a lot into each episode. And it's an amazing example of brilliant storytelling in a visual medium. And if the team on the prequels for the Game of Thrones really find their own voice and unique identity, it could be fantastic. It could be really fantastic. What will be familiar is the clothing and the dragons and the names of the house. That will be familiar. And then they what they should do is try and find something really unique. But who knows? I've got a feeling it's just going to try and emulate Game of Thrones, which is tough. It's a tough order. It's like every show is just unique in its own right. And even when shows outstay their welcome, if they go on too long, then suddenly they get spoiled. So I think Game of Thrones, people got upset because of the opposite. I think they thought they hadn't had enough, and maybe they're right. And that's why I think the prequels will do very, very well.
Yeah.
Paddy Considine, Matt Smith, Olivia Cook, just recently worked with her. She's stupendously good. So, that cast is off the chart.
Did you give her any advice? Because you're familiar with Game of Thrones. Did you talk about House of the Dragon together?
Do never give a woman advice unless you ask.
Yeah.
Words of wisdom. No, she's awesome. She doesn't need any advice from me. She's going to be absolutely fine.
All right. Next question, also by Martina Rose. Could you ever have imagined that Game of Thrones would become so famous?
No, not really. Not really. I remember when we were all standing outside the hotel we were staying in when we were filming. There was like Kit Harington and Alfie, and they were all kids, kids. And we were all smoking because we were all like really kind of hyped up and really nervous at the same time. And we knew we were part of something exciting and big and, you know, important. But you know, there's lots of big jobs. But we had no idea that it would take, you know, hold of people's imagination in the way it did. But to be fair, the books had already planted those seeds. The books, it's just that you know, you created fans of the TV show, and eventually the fans of the TV show and the fans of the books became one. And that's why you had that backlash over season 8 and some of the
Chavi asked, what kind of research did you do to interpret SYRIO FOREL? Like, you know, his backstory, your accent, and all the other stuff.
Not very much. It was an imaginative exercise, to be honest. Sometimes it is, because obviously you're playing characters that lived either at a very specific time or that actually are historical characters that actually lived. But not with Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is purely an imaginative exercise. You think of those poor fuckers who have to stare at the blue screen, imagining there's a dragon there, right? So it isn't quite like that. However, we do have the books. A lot of actors don't like reading the books because obviously the books can lead you down a very different path. So it's best not to read them. But I did read the first book, the first 3, in fact, just to get a feeling of the place, because obviously without historical or geographical locations that you can connect to, you have to find it in the words. And of course, George R.R. Martin is very detailed, very, very detailed. So he paints amazing pictures of that world. And then that's all you need, really. And the rest comes from you, you know. The accent is very much an impersonation of my dad. He's like that. So all of it is an amalgamation. It's an amalgamation of my imagination and what I've read in the books. There's not a lot of information about SYRIO. You don't really find out any more than, I mean, you don't touch on it in the TV show, but in the books, of course, he has that lesson with Arya where he tries to explain to her why he was the one chosen. And it's just another interesting little life story. I'm not going to tell you, you're going to have to go and find it and read it, but it is there. And in the final lesson, and it's you know, that's pretty much all you get. You don't even know what really a first sword of Bravos is, or even what the water dance is. The rest we made up.
Speaking about your final scene, Drew asks, is there anything you would change about your final scene?
A lovely beheading. You know, when you get the plaster cast of your head and they make it look like you, and then you get to take it home after the shoot and scare the neighbours by putting it in the window. I really am disappointed I never got to do
that. Anshuman asked, what do you think about the speculation that SYRIO is alive and is actually Jaqen H'ghar?
I like it. I like it a lot. But it's not true. It's not true. The truth is, my dear friends, is that he did sacrifice himself that sunny morning to give Arya Stark some time. However, I'm still disappointed he didn't tell her to leave before he fought the Lannister guards. waited until literally the last moment before she ran, but still he did his duty. That's the reality. But I do love the idea of him being a faceless man, and I don't know if I've said this. I've definitely said this before in other podcasts, but the reason why it works so well is because it's a beautiful narrative device, because he does exactly what he did in the books. Because remember, he wrote that episode. George R. Martin wrote that episode in season 1, episode 8. And I asked him, why didn't you kind of commit to what happened to SYRIO? Because obviously people have asked that question since he wrote it in the book, because he left it ambiguous then. And he said, no, that it is exactly the way it should be. You don't witness it because he has to stay alive in Arya's head, like he does in the reader's head. He stays alive, and the mantras and the teachings and the sayings, they repeat over and over again. And that is the reason why it is the way it is. However, David and Dan, the creators and the writers of the TV show, they decided to troll the fans by putting in an episode that doesn't exist in the books, which is the one where I talk about the god of death. Nowhere in the books does SYRIO mention religion or the faceless men at all. However, David and Dan decided to use the Jack and Hagar theory, which was already out there, and put it directly into the show and give me lines to say that seem to connect me to the faceless men, because I talk about the religion of the god of death. And that, my friends, is what we call trolling.
Well, that's perfect, because I was gonna ask you. Our last question comes from that Lodbrok. What do we say to the god of death?
Not today.
Ah.
Today.
All right. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank you so
Miltos.
much.
It was so great talking to you. And when and where can we see you in future projects? Is there anything you want to put out there?
On this webcam. Doing kung fu. I will be in the cinemas later this year in the sequel to The Hitman's Bodyguard, which is called The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, and it's as funny as that title suggests. And I get to play a guy who tries to kill Samuel L. Jackson. It's not a spoiler. It's not a spoiler to say that it doesn't go quite as I expected.
All right, we'll be watching.
Find me on Cameo if you want to shout out and you want something special. Catch me on Cameo. I'm there.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.